Hi, everybody. My name is Paul Sugar, and my journey really began in 1969 when I had a near-death experience. What happened was I was driving my car. I had a 1966 Mustang, and I was driving my car on the highway, and it hadn't rained in a long time, so there was a big oil buildup on the highway. And as I was going around one of the turns, as it started raining, the car started to fishtail and I lost control of it. I was going about 60 miles an hour at the time. And so the car started to then flip over a number of times. From what I was told by the people who stopped to help me, the car flipped over about 7 times. And to compound matters, I wasn't wearing a seatbelt. And I thought that as the car was flipping over, that it was flipping over into the oncoming traffic, the traffic coming from the other side. And so I figured if I wasn't killed in the flipping over, that when I stopped flipping, I'd be killed by an oncoming truck or car coming from the other direction. So at some point, as I was flipping over, I just knew I was going to die. And I just let go of the steering wheel and gave in to the fact that I was going to die. So I just kind of let go, not just of the steering wheel, but of everything. And at that point, um, my life flashed in front of me. Everything that had gone on up to that point and my future life as well. So my entire lifespan, starting from when I was born until when I was going to be dying, I was able to view that in a moment, in an instant, as I was in this car accident. So obviously, I did not die in that car accident because I'm here talking with you. And so the car stopped flipping. It rolled over on its side ultimately, and so the door of the car was up above me. And so I opened up the door and climbed out of the car. It was still raining, so I grabbed my umbrella and came out of the car with the umbrella over my head. And all the people who had pulled over to help me on the side of the road were just amazed that I was even alive. And frankly, not only was I alive, but I wasn't really even hurt. I just had a small scratch on the side of my back and on my knee. And that's about it. And so when I got out of the car, I was able to call a friend who lived nearby, and he came over and picked me up. And then we had the tow truck come and get my car and take it away. 2 or 3 weeks of my near-death experience, I came in touch with a group of people who had yoga study groups, meditation study groups, and Kabbalah and mindfulness study groups. Now, Kabbalah is the esoteric tradition of the Jewish religion. And I was brought up Jewish, although I never really felt religious per se, but I was interested in the esoteric tradition of Judaism, which is what we call the Kabbalah, which involves studying different concepts, lots of different symbols and things like that. My experience of the Kabbalah is that it equates to the Kundalini yoga of the East. So I kind of call the Kabbalah the Kundalini of the West. And so going to these study groups on a regular basis, I was learning how to meditate, to combine yoga meditation and mindfulness meditation, which is that present moment awareness is mindfulness, and also the Kabbalah. And so I was learning how to incorporate visualization, guided imagery, using the symbol system of the Kabbalah. So I was combining those three things. And I would say very quickly, within 2 or 3 weeks, I was starting to have very dramatic experiences as far as I was starting to have visions, out of the body experiences. I was able to remote view, and so forth and so on. And so things were changing rapidly for me. And in hindsight, I look back and I say to myself, well, maybe the near-death experience flipped a switch and gave me the opportunity to experience life in a new way. And so, in addition to that, when we have stress, particularly trauma, an intense, stressful experience, one of the ways that we cope with stress is to the extent that we're connected to our bodies, we'll disconnect from the body. Because stress, which in other words, extreme stress is the fight or flight response, right? And the fight or flight response is characterized by fear of dying and so forth and so on. If we're in a situation where our survival is being threatened, we want to have that fear of death because it helps to motivate us to survive. It's very helpful. We just don't want to carry it around with us all the time. And so when we're traumatized, we disconnect from the body because we don't want to be in the body when that trauma actually happens to us. Okay. So it's just a way of coping, but a very positive way, as I say, for a short term, but not for the long term. Now, another thing that I learned when I was in these out-of-body, other dimension experiences is getting back to that ability to focus one's attention. Remember, I spoke about that earlier. What I've discovered is that the way one brings one's spiritual essence into the body is through the medium of attention. Let me say that again, because this is the key to everything. The way that one is able to merge that spiritual essence with the body is by focusing one's attention on the body, because attention is an attribute of the spirit. Okay? And when you're focusing the attention on the body, it draws that spiritual essence into the body. And as the spiritual essence comes into the body, it brings all of that energy, all of that positive energy, all those positive qualities, and it actually transforms the nature of the body. It creates healing opportunities. It brings you into much deeper experiences of the things that I mentioned before, the love, the compassion, gratitude, all those good things that we value so much as qualities of being a human being. And so it brings that positive energy, all of those great qualities, all the healing capacities, and it actually has a very profound effect on every cell in the body, all of our genes, and everything like that. And there's been a lot of research done with mindfulness and neuroscience, with neuroplasticity and genetics and epigenetics and things like that, which shows that the practice of mindfulness has a very profound positive effect on all the things that I'm talking about. They haven't yet figured out how this works. All they know is that it works. But I've figured out how it works because I've seen it, in my out-of-body experiences while in the other dimensions. And what I see is that ability to focus one's attention, that pure attention, is the bridge that connects that spiritual essence, that spiritual energy to the body and brings it all together, brings that energy into the body, which then transforms the nature of the body, the health of the body, and all aspects of your life. I think the most effective practice with mindfulness, and of course, as you know, I'm recommending that people begin with mindfulness and build a strong foundation in the present moment in their bodies. And then if they want to explore other practices, great. So I think that the core mindfulness practice is, you remember I mentioned the different things that we focus on in mindfulness, which is the five senses, the breath, the emotions, and the thoughts. I think it would be good to start with the breath. The breath is a very, very profound experience in it. I think it connects us most deeply with that spiritual essence that we have. And so I would recommend that people focus their attention on breathing. Now, breathing in and out through the nose. It's very important to do the breathing in and out through the nose, because nose breathing takes you out of the fight or flight stress mode, whereas mouth breathing puts you into the fight or flight stress mode. So when we're practicing our mindful breathing, we want to be doing it in and out through the nose. And so by focusing our attention on the breath, it starts to bring us back into our bodies, more deeply into our bodies. And so I think that the mindful breath practice is the best way to start. And once you feel like you've made a good connection with the breath, you can then expand into your five senses. You can do mindful eating using your five senses. Okay. You can use sound very effectively through mindful listening, different types of sound and music and things like that. Touch. Every one of the five senses is a mindfulness practice in and of itself. Same thing with emotions. When you're feeling emotions, teaching yourself to be present with that emotion, whether it's comfortable or uncomfortable, because in mindfulness, we learn how to be present in all situations, comfort, discomfort, and neutral as well. There's plenty of times where things are just neutral. They're not really comfortable or uncomfortable. So learning how to be present in those three situations. And then, of course, thinking, learning how to be present with our thoughts, and just focusing our attention on the thoughts and experiencing those thoughts as they come and go. So that's really the core of the mindfulness practice. But starting with the breath, I think, would probably be the most direct and the simplest approach for most people. And then, of course, there's mindful movement too, so mindful walking and things like that. Mindfulness is not just practiced in meditation. Mindfulness is brought into our daily activity. So we want to bring that same level of attention into our daily activity. So whether it's walking or eating or brushing your teeth or washing the dishes, you want to have that same level of present moment attention with you while you're having those experiences. And so that might be called the informal practice of mindfulness, whereas the meditation could be called the formal practice of mindfulness. But you want to be doing both of them, because I have noticed with some people, they overemphasize the meditation. They get very good at meditation, but that's it. When they go back into their lives, into their daily activity, they lose that ability to be present, in their daily activity. So the need to practice mindfulness in daily activity and meditation is there. They're complementary. And so we need to do both so that we can have that experience of mindfulness 24/7 all the time. And that is possible. In some areas, they call that flow state, being in a flow state, or peak performance, or being in the zone. A lot of athletes, professional athletes, talk about this, but you don't have to be a professional athlete to experience flow states. You can experience flow states in every aspect of your life, in every moment of your life. It's available to us moment by moment, 24/7. So, go out there and just totally be present, and in a 24/7 experience, that it completely transforms the nature of your life. Well, I would say I know that the world seems to be very chaotic right now, and I know that there's a mental health crisis out there, and people are suffering. And I would like to convey a message of optimism to everybody, because all of that suffering and that chaos that's going out there, that's all outside of you. Inside of you is where you can rediscover the peace and the optimism of your life. And so by going inward, by doing practices like mindfulness, meditation, formal practice, informal practice, yoga, whatever you're drawn to, by doing those kinds of practices, you can create and sustain that inner peace and happiness regardless of everything that's going on around you. And at that point, you can actually begin to have a very positive effect on all the negative stuff that's going on around you. And so you've probably heard before the saying that if you want to change your world, you first want to change yourself. I want to thank everybody for viewing this interview, and I hope that it's been beneficial for you and that you've learned something and found it interesting, and that you can bring what you've learned to heart, and that it can help you to transform your lives in a very positive way.